Welcome back, dear students. Today, we are going to discuss about SWAP and its various types. As you know, SWAP is also another type of derivative instrument. We have mostly heard about interest rate swaps and currency rate swap, but there are various types of swaps available in the financial market. Let's look at it. I put it here. You can see that there are broadly, we can say there are interest rate swaps, commodity swaps, inflation swaps, currency swaps, credit default swaps, otherwise called as CDS. This derivative instrument has become very popular during the financial crisis of 2008. Some people even say that the major problem for that crisis was because of this instrument, credit default swap, which is not true. I don't believe that. But this is also a type, credit default swaps, equity swaps, etc. And as you know, the name itself indicates the underlying asset for this. In case of interest rate swap, it would be the interest. That would be the underlying asset. Interest paying debt. That is actually the underlying asset in this category. However, the most common is, as we all know, it is interest rate swaps and currency swaps. So we would be mainly discussing about interest rate swap and currency swap. Let's move forward. As I always put, when you join all these points, you will get what is interest rate swap. So interest rate swap is a contractual agreement. So there is an agreement between two parties. Two parties having opposite expectation regarding the outcome of an event. Right? So it's a contractual agreement between two parties where both of them agree to make periodic payments between each other. It's not one way. Like as we say in a forward contract, it's not like that. Both of them agree to make payment to each other for an agreed period of time. It normally depends upon the maturity period of the underlying asset. Here we said the underlying asset would be interest paying debt. So the maturity of that asset, the loan period may be for 5 years, maybe for 1 year. So that is very much related to the period of the underlying asset. And then it is based upon interest. The interest calculation is always, as we normally do, it is based on the principal amount or otherwise notional amount. So in short, interest rate swap is a contractual agreement between two parties under which each party agrees to make periodic payment to the other for an agreed period of time based upon a principal amount or notional amount. That's all about it. It's very simple. In nutshell, it's just a contract to, where you see that maybe it is an agreement to share between a fixed rate of interest and a floating rate of interest, because you might expect that in future the interest is going to come down or there should be an increase in the interest rate. So based on your expectation, you enter into a contract with another party who is having an opposite expectation. Moving further, I put an example here which will help you to understand. This is a simple example. See here, Sandy, this is our one party. Sandy owns 10 lakh rupees that pays her 1.5% every month as interest. So 1.5% of her principal amount of 10 lakh as interest. So what will be the nature of this? Yes, the nature is fixed interest. Now she is expecting that future this 1.5% is going to decrease. But she has no option. She has to continue with that till the maturity period of this loan. So she is searching for a person, another person who is having an opposite expectation regarding the movement of interest rate. She finds it. She finds Charlie. So here she exchanges this with Charlie, who agrees to pay Sandy Libor plus 1% per month on the principal amount. Now, what is Libor? It is London Interbank offer rate, right? So this is an agreement between Sandy and Charlie, where both of them are having opposite expectation. See, Charlie is promising a flexible rate of interest because Libor would be fluctuating based on the external and internal environment in the country. Right. So this is an agreement. This is a typical example of an interest rate swaps. So in conclusion, the basic idea behind interest rate swap is to provide the business a way to hedge their exposure to change in interest rate. That's the crux. To hedge against the changes in the interest rates. I hope you understood. It's very simple. The name itself say what is the kind of derivative instrument it is. It is. Right. So we are going to discuss about the next one. What is currency swap? Again, the name says what will be the underlying asset. The underlying asset here is currency. Currency of any country. Maybe dollar, maybe global British pound, maybe yen, maybe rupee. It can vary. So it is actually exchange of payments denominated in two different currencies. Okay. So the important factor which you have to remember is it will be two different currencies. That is why it is also called as cross-currency swaps. Normally, this is an off-balance sheet transaction in which two parties exchange the principal and the interest in different currencies. So, this is not normally brought into the balance sheet transactions. These are generally engaged by financial institutions. If you look, normally financial institutions would be having a lot of currency, and they are the one who will be exposed to a lot of risk due to currency fluctuations. So this is normally undertaken by financial institutions. Here, what you have to remember is it can be like both the parties paying a fixed rate interest. That is, it can be hedging between both the parties for fixed rate of interest. I hope you understand. Fixed rate of interest in two different currencies. Maybe I am a customer from India who is having a debt which is denominated in Indian rupee. And I'm going to have a transaction with another customer from United States whose debt would be expressed in terms of dollar. But both of us are having fixed rate of interest. That's possible. Same like that, both of us might be having floating rate of interest. Or it can also be such that maybe customer from India is having a fixed rate and the customer or the trader from the United States is having a floating rate. That's possible. So that's why here we say that here the interest payments are usually settled in cash. Why? Because each payment will be in a different currency. So if I'm going to settle it by balancing the amount, it is pretty difficult. So in case of currency swaps, normally the cash settlement is practiced across the world. Are you there with me? So here it is the exchange of payments denominated in two different currencies. Okay. Now I put an example here. Here, on a trading day, company A exchanges 100 million US dollar floating rate interest debt into a fixed rate global British pound loan. Okay, so this is two different currencies. One is dollar, another one is pound. And finally, on the maturity date, the final trading date, company A exchanges 100 million US dollar with the country B in return for 74 million pounds. So this is denominated in two different currencies, and this is an exchange rate of 0.74 when expressed in US dollar term, that is US dollar by British pound. Or otherwise, it is equivalent to 1.35 of global British pound by US dollar. So this can be expressed in terms of US dollar as well as, we have learned this in the previous class, foreign exchange risk management. In that chapter, we have learned direct quote and indirect quote, the same thing. First one is direct quote, right? If you are from United States, that will become direct quote, and the second one will become an indirect quote. Okay. Now, here the basic difference. Now you might be thinking, what is the basic difference between the currency swap and interest rate swap? Because you might think both exchange the interest rate, right? But here what you have to understand is, in currency swap, there is often an exchange of principal amount also along with the interest rate. It's not just a periodic payment. There is an exchange of the principal amount also. I hope you are there with me, right? Okay, we'll move forward. This is a term which is very well connected with swap, which is often referred to. It's an ideal condition where there is no loss or profit for both the parties. So we are talking about par swaps. Par swaps are swaps in which the present value of the fixed leg cash flows is equal to the present value of the floating leg cash flows. In other words, the NPV of this transaction will be 0. Now, some of you might be having a doubt of what is fixed leg. Fixed leg cash flow is a series of payments calculated by applying a constant rate of interest to a notional principal amount. It's a series of payments. In simple terms, it's just a series of payments which are calculated by applying a fixed rate to the principal amount. So here, in case of flexible floating or maybe floating leg cash flow, it would be applying the floating rate to a the notional principal amount or notional or principal amount. I hope you are there with me. What you have to understand here is the difference between two payments will be 0. Literally, there is no benefit for both the parties. Okay, such type of swaps are called as par swaps. After talking about all these, can you tell me what would be the benefit of a swap agreement? Or what are the advantages offered by swaps in a financial market? Can you think of it? Yes. I guess that you are answering in this way. How does it reduce the cost of borrowing? Because the investor is given with a wider choice. He can look for within the country as well as outside the country to find the cheapest source of fund. Suppose if the domestic interest rate is very high, the investor can think of borrowing from a foreign country where the interest rate is low. So for companies or for business, it can help in reducing the cost of borrowing. That's the greatest advantage of swap. Earlier, it was not possible. But now they can, in the global scenario, they can travel to anywhere. They can have an agreement with a party in any country who is ready to supply money at a lower rate. Right? Then the second one. Here, there are two perspectives. One is when your cost of borrowing is low, your return is very high. We know that. We have learned that in financial management. That's one angle. The second angle is, see, from a lending perspective, if a lender finds that, or if a person who is willing to lend money finds that the interest rate available in his country is low, this we are talking about interest income. Interest income is low. He can think of lending to a customer in a different country where he can get a higher income. So this return perspective we have explained in two different perspectives. From a borrower's perspective, it reduces the cost of borrowing. Naturally, that will lead to an increase in return. Now, the second part is we are considering it from the part of a financial, it can be a financial institution, it can be an individual investor who is trying to lend his money. So when he is lending, he can have a choice of lending to a country, to an investor who's ready to pay him more return. So he gets higher interest income. I hope you are there with me. Now the next point, it is very clear for you. It will help in reducing the loss of return, the possibility of loss due to fluctuations, due to volatility of the interest market. Because if interest rate is constantly fluctuating, you will be in a you will not be in a position to fix your price, or maybe when you fix, it may not be profitable for you because the currency rate has changed. So that you can avoid, may not be 100%, but you can minimize by looking into a swap market. Swap as a derivative option. And the last part is swap contracts bring some kind of smoothening in the currency movement, because you are making it transparent for both the parties, the buyer as well as the seller, what is going to happen in future. So the steep fluctuations in the market is normalized through swap transactions. So these are some of the major benefits of swap as a derivative contract. I hope you are there with me. In conclusion, we talked mainly about two types of swap. One is, yes, interest rate swaps, and the second one is currency swap. Interest rate swap, the first thing which you have to understand is it is a swapping of interest rate between two parties. Maybe a fixed being swapped with a floating one. The other part, the second one which we discussed, was about currency swaps. Here, there is a swapping happening between two parties, but this is denominated in two different currencies. Two different currencies. So, in the normal case, along with the interest, there is a transfer of principal amount also. Are you there with me, my learners? I hope things are very easy. It's very easy to understand. Okay, so that's it. It's all about swap. Now you have your assignment 3, which is to be completed on 24th of April. It's very simple questions. Here you can know the first 3 questions are objective in nature, and the 4th question is you can you can just try to find out the reason why financial swap markets have emerged or it became very popular in India in the recent year. You can also reflect on global scenario also. So this carries a weightage of 15%. Thank you, dear learners.